Oh, is that right? Oh, wait a minute. He was born in the US. Now, some people will look at that clock. Now, I'm gonna put some gum in here.
Well, greetings and welcome to the Taylor House. And as Dad said, I'll be the MC. First of all, we're here to celebrate the life and times of Nellie, a very special person to us all. A person whose spirit surrounds us on the walls, on the floors, in the gardens of this wonderful home. And her spirit fills all of us, and you'll see in how people talk about her impact on us, and also in the video, how wonderful she is. First of all, great timing. Want to thank everyone for the support over the past few years, and in particular the past several months that have been so hard. Whether you've been helping build ramps, move furniture, provide meals, offer kind words, early morning lockout service. It's a bit of a story, but anyway, you're collectively such a warm and friendly community for Nellie and Norman and all of us. And I must say it's only been recently that I've had the opportunity really to get to know some of you more closely. A special shout out to some of the closer neighbors, Jane and Glenn, Cheryl and Daryl, great combo. Dana, Brad, and Evan, and Barbara. Thanks so much, who have been so close.
And Terrence and Brenda, good. You saw.
Terrence and Brenda.
Yeah.
Terrence and Brenda. So thank you, and we're all here. So what are we going to be doing today? Well, our program's going to include remembrances from the immediate family, and Norman and Dad will start us off, and then Peter and Robin. Peter? Where's Peter? Peter. Way back there. And then I will say a few words. And then we invite those of you wishing to share a few thoughts to come up and do that as well. And then I've got some videos of some of our people who weren't able to be here. Some of the grandchildren and Nellie's brother Kari put together a little remembrance. Alex is also in the video. I didn't know Alex was from Seattle, so he'll be in that as well. And then finally, there will be a slideshow that I put together of remembrances of Nellie and some music. And then finally, Dad will close it up with some closing thoughts. And then we will have refreshments in a very Finnish theme, doing our best, apparently put together by some Finnish lady. So the basic facts. The basic facts. So many of you know, Nellie came from a family of 5. Her mother, hopefully I didn't cross-check these references. Fact-check these with me. Mother, Aino.
Yeah.
Father is Samuli.
Samuel,
Sister Irja and brother Kari. And she is, of course, survived by her husband, Norman, and the 3 sons, Peter, Eric, and Robin, their partners, Betsy, Joan, Maria, and Joe, and 4 grandchildren. Bianca, who's here, Alex, who's here, Annika, who's in Norway, and Derek, who's in Copenhagen. So those are some of the basic facts, and you'll learn much more about Mom's rich history, and actually Dad's history as well. But beyond today, if you'd like to pay tribute to Nellie after today, do something artistic or do something to support the arts in the memory of her. Do a sketch, write a poem, buy a painting from a local artist, visit the new San Francisco MoMA, anything to help support the arts. I made a donation to our Crocker Museum in their education program, so that would be appreciated. Clearly that was something that she enjoyed. So let's set the stage. We're here to celebrate the life of Nellie, who shared 65 years plus with a certain someone. So it's hard to talk about her without talking a bit about him. And in order to do that, I'll introduce Dad's portion of this by both of them have written memoirs of their lives. My mother's is still in the process of being translated from Finnish. And dad's is rich, detailed, augmented by diaries and whatever. So I'd like to share a snippet from both of those memoirs, describing the courtship and connection between these two remarkable people, as I say, as an introduction to what Dad will share. First of all, Mom's memoirs. And remember, this is translated from Finnish, so as you now know, our journey started in the far corner of the world. At least I thought so. I from Sortavala in Karelia, and he from the coal mining village of Goulburn in Lancashire, met in a strawberry field in Cambridgeshire, in the flat part of England. And what started as a casual friendship developed into something more serious, but it was still a friendship. After a year in England as an au pair, much of the time being spent near Manchester, where Norman was studying at the university, I returned to Finland to continue my great profession as a teacher in some far out-of-the-way school, having no great qualifications other than my student cap. It was, however, 1952, the year of the Helsinki Olympic Games, and I got a simple job through one of my father's relatives as a translator in a telex office at the Helsinki post office. Norman came to Finland to see the games with his friend Don Lewis, hitchhiking from Denmark and Sweden. He then stayed for a short while at my home. There was some understanding about the future, and after I went to teach in a tiny Niinimäki, Norman came to see me there. This is now. In spite of meals of mushrooms, potatoes, berries, and one scrawny chicken, he seemed to want to stay. Even though I sort of wanted him to go. He finally returned with his rucksack to England. Correspondence over the next 10 months produced tons of letters, and eventually we decided to get married. The wedding was on June 20th, 1953. And she closes, "The rest is history." So then we have Dad's take on this. So we pick up his memoirs. Everybody's got this diaries he's working from. Pick up Dad's memories at the Strawberry Farm in Cambridgeshire. Sometime during the start of my first week, I particularly noticed one of the Finnish girls. My first recollection was her standing alongside the cart, which had been coupled to a tractor to take us into the fields. She was wearing bright red overall shorts and seemed to have the ability of slightly hyperextending her knees backwards. with her blonde hair and tanned complexion, she looked most exotic. On Wednesday evening, there was a dance, and I asked the same Finnish girl to dance. This was our first meeting. I found that instead of some foreign-sounding name, she had what seemed to me at the time the unlikely name of Nellie. For several days after this, I didn't see her afterward. The probable reason being that she was preoccupied with a handsome Irish law student called Neil with dark curly hair. The following Friday, the 13th, was probably a more significant day than my meeting Nellie at the dance. There was a party in the camp's clubroom, and one of the games was a form of musical chairs. The Finnish girl was one of the participants, and it was during this game that our eyes truly met meaningfully for the first time. Shortly afterwards, I found her behind my chair with her hands on my shoulders, which was usual in a game. I put up my hands to hers, and she casually held them. And then I gave what I thought was a barely perceptible squeeze. And she responded with what was regarded as an unmistakable one. Parentheses, the Irish boy had now gone home. Skipping forward a week or so, I spent a total of 4 weeks at the camp. Nellie had spent 5. We had first met on July 4th, and now on July 29th, we appeared to be very much in love. However, there were so many uncertainties ahead, and it seemed impossible and unlikely that our relationship could continue. We were young, though with tremendous fortitude. It now seems incredible what occurred in the space of the next few weeks. I get breathless reading my diary, which is entryful for this period. Now, when the memoirs come out, you will be able to see all these wonderful pictures. But we're going to skip forward 16 months. The return. Early in June of 1953, an SAS Corvair Metropolitan landed at Heathrow, and about an hour later, a pretty blonde girl with a freckled nose emerged from customs. She was wearing a simple yellow and white cotton dress and burgundy shoes. Slung over her arm was a coat to protect her from the foul English weather, but merely an encumbrance on this warm, humid summer day. Under the same arm, she carried a large but slender cardboard box. A handbag hung from the same shoulder, leaving the right hand free to carry the suitcase containing most of her worldly belongings. The person meeting her was seeing her for the first time in 16 months, and he, with empty arms, had also brought with him almost everything that he owned. For all these months, he had longed for this day, one whose anticipation had been heightened by weekly correspondence during the months of separation. That's the tons of letters. Less than 2 weeks later, they too found themselves briefly separated once again. Now in the north of England, they were to be married the next day, and she was to spend the night with his aunt and uncle, who, in the absence of her relative, were to prepare her for the wedding. The uncle was to have the honor of giving her away. Saturday, June 20th, 1953, was the big day. Nellie barely understood a single word of the ceremony, a fact that she's since exploited repeatedly. I remember nothing, but afterwards we lined up in the church steps, just my parents and other relatives had done, just as other parents and other relatives had done in the past, and the photographs were taken. More were shot as we walked down the church path, and in the reception there were a few more, including one of the Archdeacon White in his gaiters. And as Mom said, the rest is history. With that, y'all, give it over to Dad.
Thank you, Eric. And I think you mentioned 16 months. It wasn't 16 months. I must have got it wrong. It was 9 months, yeah. If you remember, we were separated for 9 months. Well, you've taken my first 2 paragraphs, essentially. Anyway, thank you all for coming. And it's, I must say, it's been a tough time, and yet it's been so marvelous in that so many people have helped us so much while we've been in these past few months. I'd like to thank you all for that. Anyway, well, as Eric has said, Nellie and I met in a strawberry field. We were simply fruit picking at an international student camp in England. It was 1951. And then I go on through my marriage that Eric has talked about, and the rector, and we had a honeymoon in the drizzle of the Lake District, and we moved to rented rooms in the south of England, close to my job. Both of us were a long way from family and friends, and our marriage was destined for disaster. So many people. Those sharing such feelings were not familiar with sisu. It's a Finnish word said to defy translation. The closest rendering is, and you have to use 2 words, you can't use 1. It's a stoic determination. Now, a little bit about Nellie's background, and I think Eric has gone over most of that. She was born in Finnish Karelia, in the southeast of the country, a beautiful town called Sortavela, on the northern shore of Lake Ladoga, which is Europe's largest lake. And just 125 miles to the south, and a little beyond the southern shore, was Leningrad. And the proximity led to 2 costly wars between the 2 countries, just at the time of the Second World War. This greatly affected Nellie, who at 14, along with her family, and more than 400,000 others, had to abandon their homes to be assimilated in other parts of Finland. I should add that Karelians, on the whole, are really unlike typical Finns. They tend to be livelier, more talkative, and get on with it without too much reflection. In fact, their infusion into unoccupied Finland is said to have spiced up the country. And really for the better. Now back to England. After close to a year in the lodgings run by a grumpy, middle-aged woman whose grumpiness was mildly offset by her friendly but henpecked husband, Nellie had an idea. Why not buy a caravan? Which is a trailer, you know, we call them caravans in England. Why not buy a caravan? It would at least give us independence. Now, we had seen these caravans on one of the main roads where we used to go quite frequently on the bus. On one side of the road there was this place selling caravans, and it came into Nellie's head, maybe we could live in one of those. And then it would give us our independence, and our words to that effect. Shortly after, my very trusting father lent me most of the money in his bank account, and a 17-foot long trailer, and 17 feet, you know, it's not very long, it's from somewhere there to the end of the room, somewhere there to the end of the room. It was towed on to a Bramley apple orchard. Bramley apples are very good baking. You make the best apple pies anywhere from Bramley apples. Okay. Where it was parked by the side of a cinder road, on each side of which were 15 or so of these holiday caravans. They were holiday caravans, that's what they were. But this was no holiday. For the next 2 years, I cycled to and from work, 11 miles in each direction, rain or shine. I won't go into how I managed to do it, because we had no shows on the other end, and all I could just change my shoes and socks, so the rest of it, and anyway, but I can explain that some other time. And then I needed all the sisu I could get. Nellie was soon at work hand-stitching cheerful floral curtains and bench covers, which made the beige interior of our caravan much more homelike. And then in 1954, just after 3 months in the caravan, guess what? Peter was born. And she decorated the crib I had made. We made everything ourselves. I made with a wedding veil. She also made Peter's clothes, knitted several sweaters. Yeah, knitted several sweaters. One of my props has been removed. Including a decorative ski sweater for me and a fine cardigan for herself, which we still have and is here on display.
Nice.
This was knitted in 1954, and she used to wear it whenever she got an opportunity. And I found it, and I went online and I found out from Martha Stewart how to wash wool, and I followed her instructions, and it came out beautiful and amazing. It's very good wool.
It's on display in the other room.
And I've also got photographs proving it. Yeah. And anyway, inevitably, restless developed. Nellie couldn't stand being in the same place too long, and restless developed. And 2 years in the caravan approached. As 2 years in the caravan approached, Nellie became the driving force by a huge move to Canada. I interviewed in London, and with all expenses paid, but with a contract hovering over my head, we sailed to Montreal, making sure to first return the money I had borrowed from my father. Unfortunately, or was it fortunately, the job was not what I had hoped for. And after a year and a bit, and a story of its own, we moved to Berrien in Palo Alto. Almost penniless after repaying the Canadian company for contract breach. This was October 1957. To enable me to pay the first and last month's rent of $125 a month, for a house in Menlo Park. We found a very nice house in Menlo Park for $125. Anyway, to enable me to pay for it, a I found myself borrowing $100 from a pawn shop I used to see opposite my office on El Camino. We're in one corner of the Stamford Industrial Park, and right across El Camino is this pawn shop, and they offered loans and so on. So I got a $100 loan. We seem to be doing a lot of borrowing. We were now both 28 and had never owned a car. However, I had managed to get a Canadian driver's license after 5 breathtakingly harrowing lessons in Montreal. Now we desperately needed transportation, so we put down some of my first paychecks on a 2-door 1956 Chevy with a V8 engine, bench seats, no power brakes, no power steering or air conditioning, a stick shift, and of course in those days there were no seatbelts.
That was a two-tone. It was beautiful.
And it was a two-tone. I then made the big mistake, so I was told. By the way, those Chevys are still around.
Oh yeah.
It was a classic car. And I went later on when I was driving it, I would pull it into a gas station. The young guy would ask me, "You want to sell this car?" They used to do things to it to make it go even faster. Anyway, now with two potential drivers, we were set to explore. And at the Memorial Day long weekend in May of 1958, we drove to and camped in Yosemite with a cheap tent bought at Sears, a few kitchen utensils, a shower curtain for a ground sheet, and some blankets and candles. For more than a dozen years we went camping in this very primitive way. We went to all corners of California and beyond whenever one of those puny, by European standards, vacations occurred. But we now had the luxury of sleeping bags. We discovered sleeping bags. Later in 1958, Eric was born. And Nellie made the outlandish suggestion, instead of renewing our lease of the house in Menlo Park, we should buy a house. Immediately I said, that's quite impossible. So we bought a brand new house. It was in the remnants of an orchard with 9 mature apricot trees. Nellie now had time to paint and push for a garden. She joined the Palo Alto Art Club and won a prize at her first showing. A palette knife work, which is on the wall. It's the lowest painting on the wall at the back there on the right hand side.
Yeah.
She did several works with palette knife. I mean, she seemed to be able to use, she did oils, she did acrylics, watercolors and palette knife. And yeah, maybe she didn't do that. Now, we moved into this new house, and while the builders had put in a seeded front lawn, which had washed, and it was in winter, and much of it had washed away. The rains came, and you can't see the lawn when the rains are coming down like that. It all washed away. But the side and the back parts of the lot were weedy and untouched. Nellie and I accepted the challenge. We put in 2 lawns using a spade, a pickaxe, and a rake, peat moss, and a lot of hard work. And then we continued to landscape the property. We believe we were modern day pioneers. In May of 1961, Robin was born. Without going into reasoning, my company then enabled us to spend a year back in England. From there we visited Finland with my parents and spent a week in Imerki, which is a Finnish cottage, on a lake with Nellie's parents. Back in England we bought a car, and at every opportunity we travelled on the continent. First just the 2 of us, and then later, furnished with a small French tent, we camped through France, Switzerland and Italy, taking along Peter and Eric. My parents took care of baby Robin. It's very useful having parents handy. We never had them handy when we were here. During this year of 1963 in England,
Nellie completed her first Ruyu, and you'll see that in my, it was my study where the piano is, it's not in a different room, but very, very fine.
It's a rug.
Ruyu. It's a hanging rug, it's usually it hung on walls. Incidentally, this was just 10 years after our marriage, and we've another 52 to go. Obviously, I can't continue on this song. But we'll go on just a little. Nellie now found a house in Los Altos, which was perfect for that period of our lives. It was a walking distance to elementary and high schools, and a short bike ride to the junior high. And at that time, the Los Altos schools were just great. Later she found, and we bought, and moved to a house on 1.5 acres in the hills of Los Altos. During these times, she was often left looking after the children alone for weeks at a time, while I was away on work assignments, usually abroad. She took it all in stride, and the children seemed to thrive in my absence. And then, after they had all gone to college, we said goodbye to our house in the hills as she spirited us both to Massachusetts, where there is snow and real seasons, not too unlike Finland. It was also closer to Europe and the Caribbean. Eventually, I retired, and a few years later we returned to California, where all our children and grandchildren were now living. After a 3-year stay in Los Altos once again, we found ourselves here on the coast, very familiar to us from our earlier days, though we never once regretted those 17 years we spent in New England. Now, here, almost finally, I'm going to give 5 examples that helps me characterize Nellie. So the first example was this. In 1968, she went alone, and as she said, unfettered, when she wrote about it, unfettered by the Maelzel family. And this included, well, you know, we had 3 males, but this included the male dog and cat. And she was sure that the goldfish was also And she went on an incredible 5-week journey through Europe. Moreover, she kept remarkably detailed notes in a tiny red memorandum, very tiny writing. And it's so sad, later on she couldn't even write big writing. Anyway, and 30 years later, I reproduced the notes with minor editing. What an experience, both first and second hand. Number 2. 2 years earlier, she had hired 2 newly retired school teachers to look after the boys while we took a KQED charter flight to Amsterdam. You know, this is the days of the charter flights. I don't know if any of you remember charter flights, but I'm sure some of you do. And we travelled on the Rhine by train, toured Switzerland by train and boat, moved on to northern Italy, buzzed down the Adriatic coast, and stopping all the time and staying in places that we'd find. You go in Yugoslavia and you saw these signs, Zimmer frei, which anybody was willing to. It was before the Airbnb, yeah, just like the Airbnb. They did it on their own, sort of thing. And then on to Greece, where we had the thrill of the Parthenon and the ruins of Delphi practically to ourselves. And again, by public transportation, hitchhiking, and by boat to Italy, and eventually we sauntered through and around enchanted Sicily in a tiny rental car. And this was one of the most wonderful periods. Travelling around Sicily was absolutely remarkable. It was just lovely. And somehow managed to return to Amsterdam in time for the flight home. We managed to go up Etna and Nellie had sort of high heels on, and she was wearing a blue raincoat, I remember, because that's the warmest thing she had, and a sou'wester on, a blue sou'wester. And the Etna was spewing out rocks, and we got quite high, and not too long after that, exactly where we'd been was completely inundated with lava. We were not there at the time. Yeah, I had shown interest in, and I'd actually test driven a neat red Fiat 124 Sport Coupe. Now, the only person who might remember that, do you know what a Sport Coupe is, Terence? 124 Fiat, you weren't into Fiats, probably not. And it was a good little car.
I had MGs.
No, an MG, no, this was a Fiat. While at a conference in the East, I got a call from Nellie. She bought me the car for my birthday. She did a similar birthday transition much later when a piano, of all things, was the object. The reason for that was we were going to move from the house we had in New England to an apartment, and we had a little baby grand piano there, and we couldn't take that with us, so she bought me this other one. Number 4, Nellie called me at work to see if it would be possible for me to get a week off. She had found a cheap charter flight to Honolulu. When? I asked. Next week. She never liked to plan too far ahead. Amazingly, I managed it and kept my job. As was often the case in our travels, we had made no bookings. She was really, and I guess I'm very much the same, very bad at planning ahead. And when we got there, all the hotels were full. And there's a much more story to this, because we tried to find hotels all over the place. We ended up sleeping illegally in a small Dodge Colt in a park. But next day we made reservations on the less crowded Big Island and had a great holiday. We always, or should I say nearly always, seemed to make the best of tough situations. And then number 5, this is the last of the 5 characteristic examples. She loved to swim in scenic areas. Scenic, not particularly in pools, but she would if there's nothing else available locally, she'd swim. But she loved to swim in. When we used to go to New England, into New Hampshire, we'd swim in all those lakes there, or very often they call ponds there. And we had a great time. Not particularly in pools, but in the ocean, in Lake Tahoe, in the lakes of New England and Finland, and even in England, where on our honeymoon we swam in our underclothes in one of those invigorating tarns. Who knows what a tarn is? You do.
Is it a
Yeah.
little mountain pool?
Yeah, it is, yeah. In the Lake District, it's called. On Lake Berryessa, she water skied for the first time at the age of 40, and repeated both in Maine and the Caribbean, where she also snorkeled and learned to sail those delightful but tricky sunfish sailing boats, seeming to capsize them for the fun of it. She also skated on frozen Massachusetts ponds. Her passion, however, was cross-country skiing, both near our home in New England, but particularly in the Finnish countryside. And we spent many winters close to the Russian border doing just that, not too distant from her childhood home, in fact only about 40 kilometers away from her childhood home. Just to round off our activities, she sidled into her 80s and danced a mean tango. I should tell you, when we used to go cross country skiing with the boys to Mount Rose, and you know Mount Rose is a bit beyond Tahoe, and we used to start off early in the morning and we'd ski there in Tahoe Meadows, and we'd ski in the meadows there, and then by about 5:30 we'd start driving home. And they didn't have that big Highway 80 in then either. It was the road was not quite as fancy as it is now.
And we were doing that from Los Altos. It took forever.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, yeah.
All
We
in one
did
day.
it. Yeah, I don't know how we did it. Yeah, we did it frequently. Anyway, now how can I sum up? Wait a minute. She cycled into her 80s, and did I say and she danced a mean tango? Okay. How can I sum up? How did our marriage last for nearly 63 years? We often discuss this. Perhaps we couldn't really understand it ourselves. We both had a deep love of nature. You know, it's very interesting. When people seem to be successful at doing some things, you wonder how they manage it. And we had a visitor, this is just an aside, but it's an interesting story. We had a visit from a very old friend, and she'd driven from Arizona here, and she was 85, and she wanted to go to Clear Lake next, and she showed me the map she had, and she had a map of the whole western part of the country, and she wanted to drive on a little road to get to Clear Lake, and it was before you had the iPhone, you know, the iPhones and all that sort of thing, which was quite remarkable. So of course we were very interested to see how she managed to be so. And what she had in the morning, she'd have this, and it was some powdery stuff that she'd put in water, and she'd have it, you know, in the morning. So obvious, this is the elixir, because we were much younger then when this is the elixir. So eventually we said, how long have you been taking that? She said, oh, for about 3 weeks. Okay, how can I sum up? How did our marriage last for nearly 63 years? We often discuss this. Perhaps we really couldn't understand it ourselves. We both had a deep love of nature, and we both had a huge curiosity. We had similar tastes in most things, some of which we acquired from each other, as it's probably not uncommon. We both liked time to ourselves and our individual pursuits. We also liked to do all the work in and around the house by ourselves, seldom hiring anybody to do anything. We seem to have the feeling that if you had a house where you had to have people coming in to help you with everything, the house was too big for you. Anyway, that's not the general feeling, I know, but that's the feeling we had. We also developed a tolerance for little things that at one time annoyed us in our respective behaviours. But at the moment, I just can't think what they were. If it were possible to describe her merely using a few nouns and adjectives, I would choose the following. She was a wonderful wife, mother, companion, inspiration, challenge, instigator, innovator, goader, comforter in her own special way, cook, decorator, designer, fashion expert, gardener and traveller. She was vivacious, independent, self-reliant, industrious, creative, intuitive, inventive, and on top of that she could paint. Both pictures, some of which you see here, and house walls. If you look at the entrance to the house, she painted all the red there. And if you notice, it's unfinished, but that was her artistic side. And then she painted. I came home one day. I think I'd been to a concert, and I came home and she'd painted 2 of the bathrooms. And then later on, she painted another one, and she'd just do it. She was so fast at doing anything. So finally, we truly shared our lives and our love for each other, though seldom explicitly expressed, at a depth which made pure utterances redundant. It is also redundant to say that I miss her a lot. Thank you.
Peter? Oh, thanks. Well, it's hard to follow all that. But anyway, I'll say give my little insight and make some comments. And Eric has said thank yous and Dad said thank yous, but particularly to Dana and Jane for calling when things were kind of looking kind of bleak here. Really appreciate those phone calls and that concern. So again, I just want to share a few memories with Mom to give you some further insight, maybe a few different angles from what my dad shared. So she was obviously very ambitious at a young age. I mean, to come to England to get married to my dad without her family showed that not only did she embrace nature and wasn't afraid, or embrace adventure, she wasn't afraid, and also she was obviously smitten by my dad to do that. I mean, think about that, coming without your parents, flight, little suitcase, wedding dress, and it's amazing. So these characteristics were repeatedly displayed over the years through the moves we made. From England to Canada to California, and then from one house to a better one. She provided the seed of the idea, and my dad somehow figured out how to make it work. And most of the time, it grew, it worked. He was always there in the background. As we said, it's hard to separate out mom from dad at times, but he was always there in the background. Let me find where I am. To provide balance and rationality. The latter characteristic was maddening to my mom at times. Seemingly overextended, the moves always seemed to work out. And again, I don't mean to underplay my dad's part in any of this. He obviously saw something special, very special in her, and they were an incredible team together. And I'm truly blessed to have had such parents, or have such parents. When I was 18, she bought me a one-way ticket to London when I bogged down after my junior year in college. I needed a break, and she knew the answer. The details would work themselves out. I still have my green card at that time because I was born in that trailer in England. So I needed my citizenship before moving abroad. So I got that, and we celebrated with a special citizenship cake that my mom made with the flag on top. And I remember that quite distinctly. Yeah, great photograph of that. We had lots of great adventures together as a family. Trips to San Francisco where we picnicked in Golden Gate Park, and we were always dressed up in our Sunday best. Looking good was important to her, as you who know her saw. We went to San Gregorio Beach where we roasted smoked sausages on a grill we hid in a crack in the cliffside. We had trips to Tahoe for skiing in Mount Rose Meadows, which must have been a 5-hour trip. And I remember we flopping around in the back seat of that car, no seatbelts. Oh man, I don't know how we did it, but we did. So trips to Tahoe skiing in Mount Rose Meadows in the winter and swimming in the cool Tahoe waters in the summer. She was a strong cross-country skier, skiing into her 70s. And the roots of my daughter's Annika's success, who's a World Cup skier, can be traced to my mom. And as my friends like to say, my son Alex is a fine athlete, probably could have been a professional cyclist, and my friends say they wasted his talents. He wasted his talents in going to med school. Anyway, she loved Tahoe because of the trees, the water, the granite. Those things reminded her of her home country. 20 years ago, we all went to Finland for a midsummer's day and a family reunion. Mom led the way as we danced the polka and other dances on a floating platform as the long day went into night. I remember being amazed at her energy and her joy for life as I struggled to keep up and stay awake. So a few comments from friends of mine. One of my best friends, John, his simple comment, "Your mother was a hoot." And then another friend, Rex, he said, "She always comported herself like a Hollywood star. She was obviously destined for great things." And then my good friend Dave, he said, "Your mom always seemed to be young at heart. My memory is of someone who seemed to laugh a lot and didn't hesitate to engage in conversation with your friends. Your father was more reticent, so your mom was the parent who showed more spirit. He didn't know everything. She didn't hesitate to get us each out on the dance floor at Betsy and my wedding. She was pulling my friends out and dancing with them. Yeah, it was even more inspiring when she got your dad out there. She was fun, and that is a memory I will keep. As she got older, she was loving and encouraging. She had Norman set up slideshows of our various adventures, and that became an important part of the kids' visit back here. She was proud of us boys. She increasingly talked to Finland and always provided us with Finnish travel brochures, books, and articles when we visited. Every time we go back or something about them. She spoke more about having to leave Karelia and when the Russians advanced. She spoke of moving back to Finland frequently. Finland was obviously deeply rooted in her heart. She loved to talk to strangers and would strike up engaging conversations out of the blue. She loved little kids. She loved their innocence and laughter. And boy, did she love you, Evan, huh? She loved your surprise visits and your little gifts and stuff. You were really special to her. As she became more frail, Dad stood by her and cared for her, showing remarkable love, devotion, and determination. My mom repeatedly expressed her appreciation and love for my dad. It was very sweet to see, and she realized that, she really needed Dad. I'll miss her a lot, but I, like family, friends, neighbors, and acquaintances, will all live on, having been enriched by her life. It's cliche, but she really did live a bountiful life, and felt like she had done it all by the time the merciful end came. And I can see her influence carrying on through generations of tailors and people that she touched in her life. Thank you.
Very nice. Right. Knowing how Mom was incredibly tech savvy, I would read like that. I didn't have a clue.
Turning in her urn.
Put that thing away. All right. So I'm the youngest of three sons. I'm sure Eric, who's about 2 or 3 years older, and Peter, who's about 7, would have a different take on Mom, but this is mine. And of course, believe me, they softened up Mom for when she prepared me for life. She taught me the basics: to cook, to sew, garden, the importance of managing money and hard work, but also the appreciation of art and design, and how to carry yourself and communicate in public. She's very saying, stand up straight, make sure you look in the eye, very much pushing all that along all the time. She passed on her joy of nature, we've talked about that, from ocean to mountains and the desert. She introduced us to the joy of travel, immersing ourselves in different cultures that still drives us today. Of course, the whole family is all over the world. It's just something that's happened. She was tough. She definitely believed in the old saying, spare the rod, belt in our case, spoil the child. I remember developing an escape plan when I had pushed her to the brink, usually beginning with her yelling, bloody hell. And being the engineer here, I always had duplicity. I always had to have an escape plan. So the plan consisted of running into my room, locking the door, and if that failed, I would jump out the window, run to my friend's house, and watch cartoons all afternoon until things cooled down. It worked every time. Yes, I probably drove her crazy sometimes, and sometimes she drove me crazy, but she never stopped being Mom and preparing and supporting us for a life in the big world. Bottom line, she was part of the Mom and Dad team that introduced us to many things that makes life full, helped us make us what we are today. I think we've been quite successful and happy. So to a job well done, rest in peace.
So I'm the middle son, so that means I can be a little more, So I'm the middle son who, I think on the way to the hospital, Dad, Mom said, Norman, I'm not going to have this baby. I'm not going through with this. I'm not going through with this. And Norman, oh Nellie, be reasonable. So that's how my last words in the womb was that. I think I was born very quickly. And have been running ever since. So I came up with a top 10 list of how I know I had a special and unique mother. Number 10 on the list is, I ran away from kindergarten class each day for the first week of school, wanting to spend more time with my mother. She would find me hiding in the bushes and promptly return me to the classroom. I guess she wasn't interested in spending more time with me. Number 9, when Mom decided I was not focused enough on my learning to tie my shoes, I was locked in the garage until I could successfully tie and untie and tie them. I seem to recall a similar circumstance about telling time. Number 8, why is she so special and unique? From elementary to junior high, she made my lunches and our lunches for school, which was a crapshoot. I recall a peanut butter and jelly sandwich composed of bread, butter, jelly, and peanuts. I had to secretly eat my sardine and cucumber sandwich. I donated a fair number of sandwiches to the cafeteria garbage rather than expose them to my friends. I got the hint and started to make my own lunch. Number 7 on the list. One summer she told me to stop inviting that big boy over to swim. He splashes too much water in him. Number 6. In 7th grade, friends and I were escorted to the police station for breaking and vandalizing the teacher's lounge at our local elementary school. And the officer was calling each of the parents to explain why they were at the police station. So over the speakerphone, the police officer told Mom that he had her son Eric at the police station. She responded in her thick accent for all to hear, "That is not my Eric. You have no wrong Eric." I was humiliated. No, Mom, it's me. Number 5. At my band concerts, there was always one parent who would stand up and call out to her child. I got the reputation, "Eric, your mom is out there." I got good at hiding behind my music stand. Let's see. Number 4, I came home from high school one day to find my entire bedroom painted red. Definitely blood red and covering every possible paintable surface. Even the rug is red. Let's see. And then I returned home from sophomore year at college and willingly lived 6 months in a chicken coop on the property rather than live in the main house. I did decorate the coop with some of her artwork, though. Number 2 on the list of how I know I had a special and unique mother. One Christmas, she gifted me a colorful flowered shirt. I soon realized that it buttoned on the wrong side. It was a woman's blouse. Perhaps that was a way of foreshadowing future events. And number 1, why did I know I had a special and unique mother? Well, it took me 30 years plus to put it into perspective, but my love of art, music, travel, cooking, nature, and my independent self-confidence are owed in part to the upbringing of a special and unique mother, Nellie, who I call Mom. So now, after our remembrances, I invite others who would like to step up, maybe the immediate family, Joan, Bianca,
Sure.
others, and then follow. Great. Just come up.
This was very telling about, I'd like to point out, everyone else's notes.
Introduce your connection.
I'm a partner. I'm a proud partner. I'm probably only former sister-in-law, because there won't be another one, a daughter-in-law. But I'm a proud partner. To Nellie's Sisu, she encountered a Sicilian Scorpio. And I knew the first time I met Nellie, I was overwhelmed in a remarkable way by this woman who was just everything. She could cook and sew and create and paint and speak foreign languages and was beautiful. And I remember thinking I had never met anyone with so much in one person. But of course soon we began to fight. But I think it's because I hope that she also admired my strength, and we were good opponents. Okay. One of the things Nellie did not like about me was the way I was emotional and cried over it. Her sister really reacted to me. However, all right, so I do have so many funny thoughts of Nellie, and they're way more positive than negative at this point. And one of my favorite stories is when Eric and I got married. So we were living in Boston at the time, and something that Nellie and I always shared was a sense of fashion. And I wouldn't say I had her exact gift, but we both liked to make a splash all of the time. So what should I wear when I get married? And I am not a traditional person, and I didn't want the regular gown. So every year, Filene's Basement in Boston used to have this crazy sale where they would open the doors and women literally would riot in to get the discount wedding dresses. So Nellie said, what the hell, let's go. Just like, what the hell, let's buy a house. So we went running in, and I didn't even know what we were looking for, and she picked out this very ugly traditional gown that was $19.99. And she said, let's get it. I know I can do something with this. And so I said, okay. And she brought it home, and she took this out, and she changed that, and she shortened the sleeves and made the buttons, and it was spectacular. And at the wedding, we joked that we were going to tell people it was made by the Italian designer Filani Bassamenti. And many people asked me, where did you get that gown? And Nellie and I would wink and giggle and say it was a designer gown from Filani Bassamenti. Later, I received pictures of Nellie wearing my wedding, which I should have brought. And it's funny because it didn't bother me at all as a woman whose dress was worn by someone else. I thought it was so Nellie to wear. And later Eric wore it for Halloween.
I think we got married on October 19th, and that Halloween I wore it for
Yes.
Halloween. Yeah.
So, the last thing I will say about this remarkable woman was, as a language teacher, I loved Nellieisms, and she used to say things like, I can't make the heads or the tails, or that he's just a country pumpkin. Yeah, so I'm very honored to have been part of this family. I hope I still am, as an ex-part. And thank you.
So I inherited the weep. So I am Googly's granddaughter. I'm Eric Jones' daughter. To me, the spirit of Googly will live on in so many ways. When I take a walk on the beach in the morning, which she likes to do, although I do it a couple hours later when the sun has risen. The smell of cardamom will always remind me of her freshly baked cinnamon rolls, which I asked for a recipe from Baja Pop, and what he sent me was 2 separate recipes from things that had been vetted by Googly, because of course she didn't use a recipe. So I still haven't made them yet, but one day I'll sort of piece together the different pieces of the recipe. They probably won't taste as good, but they'll do. Some of my earliest memories of my own life are of playing with her and Pop Pop at our house in Wenham, when I would serve tea on the porch to my stuffed polar bear Polly and all of my customers, which I think was just you. And I still have Polly and sleep with him every night. I love traveling and art, and I know that's because Googly loved traveling and art too. I'll always remember how special it was to visit Finland together, 2010, I think, 2009. And even though it was so hard for me to imagine what her life must have been like there, I remember I was just so proud of where she had come from, and so proud to be Finnish, even though I literally was the only person in the country with brown hair. Like my home, but my kid was a part of me. She was a strong, smart, and stylish force of nature who raised my dad to be strong, smart, and stylish. And I think that I turned out the same. I'm really proud to be her granddaughter. And I'll miss her a lot, but she lives on for me in a lot of ways. And those are very special.
Was there anyone else who'd like to say? Evan, come up and say something.
Wait, Mom, can I say the story? No, probably
It's all friends and family.
not. So I'll take that as a no.
Evan, we used to really love when you came to the door and you maybe bring some little thing, maybe a flower or something like that, you remember? And she used to invite you in and talk to you, and you talked to her and you told her stories.
For an hour is when she pulled me in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but yeah, she really liked you, yeah.
And what was your name for her?
Nine.
Nai. You always called her Nai. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay, very good, Evan.
Tell me your story later.
Yeah,
we're gonna hear the story. All right. So, Dad, do you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to.
Well, actually, no. We've got others we have two people from afar. So
Okay, all
let's,
right, yeah, good.
So talk amongst yourself while I get this hopefully set up.
Some memories of my sister Nelly. Our parents were born in Karelia, father in 1900 and mother 1901. Now Karelia is a part of Russia. Our family, the parents and the children at that time, Nelly and Iria, were in the middle of war dreadfulness in 1939-45, and our family lost their properties as so many of those Karelian inhabitants. I don't remember if Nelly or Iria ever told me of the war years. In fact, you must remember that we had a big difference in age. I was born in 1945. Both Iria and Nelly were left home when I was starting an elementary school in 1952. Because of that difference in age, I didn't have very close relations with my sisters, especially Nelly, because she had moved from Finland when I was a young kid. I remember Nelly an extraordinary person. She was not like a typical quiet and reserved Finn. She was an outward person who did not hesitate to talk with unknown people and to strike up an acquaintance with others. One brave task were to travel with Norman to Karelia in Russia and find out my parents' former house. It was still inhabited. Nelly told she was knocking the door, but no one didn't open. Also, I remember the Soininen's meeting in Korpilampi near Helsinki in 1996, just about 20 years ago. Nelly had collected all Soininens together, about 35 persons from different parts of Finland. Meeting was unique in our family. Nelly didn't ever forget her home country. Every time she called to me, she asked about Finland and its economic situation and how Finland is managing. Of course, I remember Nellie's many-sided artistic quality and her colorful paintings, which she made maybe hundreds, and arranged also many art exhibitions. Unfortunately, we had chance to meet quite seldom, but I am glad she would see our and Irja's grandchildren, and so the continuation of our family. I miss you, Nellie. Rest in peace. Your brother, Kari.
While I have many fond memories of Grandma Nellie, there are 3 themes that stick out in my mind. Her dance lessons, her scrumptious baked goods, and her passion for all things Finnish. As a child, I used to eagerly anticipate Grandma's visits to my parents' home in Truckee. I distinctly remember one visit where she taught me how to dance the octopus. We burst into laughter when our arms got tangled up as we twirled around in our socks on the hardwood floor. She also introduced me to the fundamentals of the tango, although to this day the octopus remains my favorite style of dance. Grandma's cinnamon rolls, of course, occupy a special place in both my heart and stomach. Above all, Grandma instilled in me a sense of respect and wonderment for Finnish culture. She would regale me with tales of cross-country skiing on perfect tracks in the hinterlands of Finland, and stories of visiting Santa and his reindeer in Lapland. She also loved showing pictures of her hometown in Karelia and telling me about her upbringing and work as a school teacher. She patiently tried to teach me Finnish phrases. I found the silent P's to be deceptively difficult, and often included little bits of Finnish phrases in my birthday cards. My memories of Grandma from my adult life are just as special as those from my childhood. When we visited Half Moon Bay shortly after I became engaged to my wife, Sydney, Grandma warmly welcomed Sydney into the family, and we enjoyed a delicious meal together, punctuated by Grandpa's champagne toast. Whenever we spoke on the phone after that, Grandma would always ask about Sydney and send her love. By the way, Sydney loves hearing the story of how Grandma and Grandpa met picking strawberries in a field in England. I will dearly miss Grandma and will cherish these memories.
Hi everyone, this is Annika Taylor, and I am one of Grandma Nellie's grandchildren, and I'm here in Vik, Norway, and I unfortunately can't be there to celebrate Grandma's life with you all, but I wanted to share just some of my favorite memories of Grandma and hopefully celebrate her life in a way that she would like. So I think the first memory that I have is just her spunk. I think she and I are very similar in that, and there are always times when I would go up to Grandma and I would give her a bit of sass and I'd say, "Grandma, you're not the boss of me." And I think she really appreciated that because she likes that little bit of spark and spunkiness. Also, her food was something that I'll always remember, especially pirkas, which is the Finnish pastry that has delicious rice pudding inside of this bread outer casing, and you put egg butter on it, and it's amazing. And also she'd make cinnamon rolls, and when she'd make her cinnamon rolls, I'd sneak downstairs in the middle of the night and I'd peel off a little layer thinking that nobody would notice in the morning, but of course they would. Yeah, so of course Grandma, she's gonna live on in my memory, and it's awesome to be here in Norway, just in the mountains, being able to think of all the stories that she's told me of nearby Finland and her homeland and how she loves it so, and just being able to appreciate a new land and maybe see it through Grandma's eyes. So yeah, so I hope you guys all have a nice celebration celebrating Grandma's life, and sending my best wishes and all my love. Bye!
Hello, greetings from Denmark. For those of you who don't know, I am also one of Googly's grandchildren. Or should I say Nellie, but for my whole life she was Googly, so for this video she will be either referred to as Googly or Googs. I picked up a cinnamon roll today in her honor. However, I think everyone in attendance probably understands that there really pales in comparison to any of the magic that was coming out of her kitchen. The first thing when I think about Googly would have to be the Christmas presents and birthday presents that we received growing up, and the comical and countless numbers of Finnish brochures and travel guides that we have collected over the years. But I am looking forward to working on my Finnish in the future and going through those beautiful pictures in those books. But on a more serious note, I would say that when I think about Googly now, the word that comes to mind is really courage, because in order to leave Finland and leave all the family behind, and start a new family in England and then eventually the US, and have that grow into such a compassionate and amazing little unit that we have today, just speaks wonders to who she was as a person. And also I know that throughout my entire life I will always be carrying that Finnish sisu and have that stubbornness and all of that just compelling me to be successful and really get ahead. And I know wholeheartedly that's coming from Googly. But yeah, I hope to enjoy the Scandinavian summer today and take a dip in the Baltic Sea, just as I'm sure Googly would have been doing not so long ago back in Finland. So, sending love to family and friends there. Sorry I can't make it, but I hope you guys are all enjoying celebrating an amazing, amazing woman's life. So, here's to you, Googly. I love you. Bye bye. Here's to you, Googly. I love you.
All right, and then to conclude, we've got a slideshow of photos of Nellie's life and our life pointer. Cue that up.
not frightened of dying. Any time will do, I don't mind. Why should I be frightened of dying? There's no reason for it. You gotta go sometime. I never said I was frightened of dying.
All right, well, Dad, would you like to?
Well, yeah, I just had a very short one. On our golden wedding anniversary, which was 13 years ago, and I wanted to say, you know, Nellie had ideas about the person she wanted to marry. I guess maybe most young women have that feeling. And she always wanted to marry a dark-haired, bronze-skinned, Italian or Argentinian type, about her own height, who could dance the tango. She was passionate about the tango. Instead, she got a red-headed, pale-skinned in winter, lobster red-skinned in summer, Englishman, who seemed to be a foot taller, and whose dancing skills included the waltz, turning in one direction only, a barn dance, no comments necessary, and a military two-step, popular at the time of the Battle of Waterloo. Desires are not always met, but we do learn to cope, as we have done for these astounding 50 years. That was at our golden wedding anniversary, and that's how it went.
and it's amazing what can happen in 13 years. Anyway, yeah, I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. So we have, thank everyone for coming in. We've got
Refreshments with a Finnish theme, done by Finnish women. Please.
Well, done by, I'd say, pseudo-Finnish women.
And if you're interested, we'll be posting the slideshow YouTube, so you'll be able to view it. I know it's kind of hard, small screen. But thanks so much for joining us.